Are you giving me away too, Dad? Maya's small hand settled on Marcus Reed's shoulder just as his pen touched Wave's all marital claims. Across the aisle, Evelyn Hartreed rose behind 3 attorneys, staring at the grease-stained blue folder beneath the divorce papers, where a cream certificate showed the embossed seal FR01. Nolan Voss leaned toward Deborah Sloan. Seal it before the conversion condition is triggered. Marcus looked at his daughter. Never you. Then he signed. 3 hours earlier, the fluorescent lights of the Fulton County Courthouse had hummed above Marcus like something electrical struggling not to fail. He sat alone on a hard wooden bench outside the family courtroom, his clean white shirt buttoned to the throat and his charcoal garage jacket folded across his knees. A pale oil stain remained near one cuff, too deep for detergent to remove. Beneath the shirt, his wedding ring rested on a cord against his chest. Maya sat beside him with her backpack between her shoes, drawing circles on the zipper with one finger. Marcus had packed her apple slices in a plastic container and written her name on the lid, the same way he did every school morning. You can stay with Ms. Turner when they talk about money, he told her. Am I allowed to come in when they talk about me? They are not supposed to talk about you like you are property. His voice stayed low. But if they do, I'll be there. The courtroom door opened. Evelyn entered from the opposite hallway in a dark navy suit, followed by Deborah, Nolan, and Grant Hart. She looked composed from a distance, but Marcus noticed her right thumb rubbing the silver fountain pen engraved M&E. She only did that when she had not slept. He almost asked if she was all right. Nolan stepped between their lines of sight before he could. Mr. Reed, Nolan said pleasantly. Today can remain dignified if everyone accepts the practical facts. Facts usually manage without your help, Marcus replied. Nolan smiled as though Marcus had made a harmless joke. Inside, Deborah arranged 3 thick binders across Evelyn's table. Marcus placed only the blue folder in front of him. Its corners had softened over the years, and the faint smell of machine oil rose when he opened the flap to check the seal. The court clerk marked its position with a pencil line, then warned both sides not to touch it until the judge ruled on admissibility. When the hearing began, Deborah described Evelyn's leadership, Ardent Mobility's growth, and Marcus's limited informal mechanical support. She spoke gently, almost regretfully, as if erasing a man were an act of professional compassion. Marcus did not interrupt. He watched Maya through the narrow glass panel in the courtroom door as Ms. Turner led her toward the children's waiting room. Then Deborah produced the waiver. Mr. Reed has agreed to surrender the marital residence, ordinary shares, and all remaining claims, she said. There is no reason to prolong this. The judge looked over her glasses. Mr. Reed, do you understand what this document does? Marcus looked at Evelyn. She did not look back. Yes, Your Honor. The clerk carried the papers to him. A chair scraped behind the rail. Maya had slipped back inside, clutching one strap of her backpack. Before anyone could stop her, she crossed the short distance and placed her hand on his shoulder. Her question landed harder than anything Deborah had said. Marcus answered her, signed, and lifted the waiver. The cream edge of FR01 slid from the blue folder. Evelyn stood. Nolan whispered his warning. The judge's pen stopped above the docket, and Evelyn realized her advisor had just named a conversion trigger no one in that courtroom had yet been told existed. The judge's pen remained suspended above the docket. What conversion condition? She asked. Nolan Voss straightened one silver cuff link. A general term, Your Honor. For a document you said no longer exists? The fluorescent lights hummed over the polished wood, and the cream edge of FR01 remained visible beneath Marcus's signed waiver. Evelyn's fingers closed around the silver M&E fountain pen in front of her, but she did not look at Marcus. She looked at Nolan, waiting for the answer he usually gave before doubt had time to form. Deborah Sloan rose smoothly. There is no mystery here. Mr. Voss was referring to the ordinary conversion of disputed marital assets. Opposing parties often attach dramatic importance to obsolete corporate paperwork. She gave Marcus a patient smile, the kind professionals used when they wanted cruelty to sound like concern. Mr. Reed has had a difficult transition from the corporate environment to manual repair work. We should be careful not to confuse sentiment with ownership. Marcus glanced toward the courtroom door. Maya stood beside Miss Turner in the hallway, one hand wrapped around her backpack strap, her face still carrying the fear created by her own question. He folded the waiver so she could no longer see the words about surrendering everything. "Please take her back to the waiting room," he said quietly. "She doesn't need to hear adults turn a marriage into a balance sheet." Deborah waited until the door closed before clicking a remote. A white screen descended behind the judge, and a document titled Contribution Summary appeared beneath the seal of Ardent Mobility. Evelyn Hartreed was listed as founder, chief executive officer, and principal architect of the company's growth. Grant Hart appeared as early operations leadership. Marcus's name sat near the bottom in smaller type, informal mechanical support provided during the founder's marriage. "This is the company's verified history," Deborah said. "Mr. Reed occasionally repaired prototype vehicles and offered spousal encouragement. Valuable in a personal sense, perhaps, but not measurable as equity." "You fixed cars," Grant added from behind Evelyn, his voice soft enough to appear reluctant. "There's dignity in that, Marcus. No one is taking it away from you." The words settled over the courtroom like a clean sheet placed across something dead. Marcus could smell the faint machine oil rising from the blue folder and the sharper citrus scent of Nolan's cologne from across the aisle. On the screen, the cap table moved from page 14 to page 16. Page 15 was missing, and the empty cell beside the first founder entry still carried a faint vertical border where a name had once been. Marcus saw it. He said nothing. Deborah opened a second binder. "There is also the question of parental stability. During the most difficult period of the marriage, Mrs. Hartreed sought professional treatment following the loss of their infant son. Those records may explain why certain financial decisions were misunderstood." Evelyn's head snapped toward her attorney. "You said those were not being used." "Only if necessary," Deborah replied. "To protect you." "From what?" "From a narrative designed to make Mr. Reed appear indispensable." Marcus stood before the judge could speak. His chair legs scraped once across the floor, then stopped. "Those records should be excluded." Deborah blinked. "Mr. Reed, they may be relevant to your custody position." "They are not. They document impaired judgment. They document grief." The room quieted. Marcus placed one palm flat beside the blue folder, not touching it. "Her grief is not evidence against her ability to love our daughter." Evelyn finally looked at him. There was no gratitude in her expression, only confusion sharpened by suspicion. A man trying to take advantage of her would have used those records. A man performing kindness might also refuse them where everyone could see. She did not know which man sat across from her anymore. Deborah recovered first. "A generous gesture," she said, "but it does not change the financial facts." During the recess, 2 reporters waited beyond the courtroom doors. Grant's assistant handed them a prepared statement describing Marcus as a former spouse seeking leverage through custody after contributing little to Arden's success. In the children's waiting room, Maya heard one reporter repeat into his phone, "He never built anything." She unfolded the picture in her backpack, stared at the words "Mom builds cars. Dad keeps everyone safe," then folded it down the middle and slid it beneath her coloring book. Back inside, the clerk asked both sides to step away while she logged the sealed exhibits. Marcus noticed the pencil line she had drawn beneath the blue folder. When she returned from the printer, the folder sat 2 inches beyond that mark. Its seal remained intact, but someone had moved it. Across the aisle, Nolan murmured to Grant, believing Evelyn was reading an email. "Once the founder position is cleared, the transaction can proceed." Evelyn's thumb stopped against the engraved M&E on her pen. Nolan corrected himself without changing his smile. "The settlement can proceed." Marcus looked from the missing page on the screen to the displaced blue folder, while Evelyn slowly raised her eyes toward the word transaction still hanging in the air. Evelyn kept her eyes on Nolan after he corrected transaction to settlement, but the recess bell sounded before she could ask what he meant. Chairs scraped across the courtroom floor. Papers slid into binders. Marcus waited until the clerk locked the grease-stained blue folder inside the evidence cabinet, then followed Miss Turner to the children's waiting room, where Maya sat beneath a paper mural of smiling courthouse buildings. She had not touched the crackers beside her. The picture from her backpack remained folded beneath a coloring book, its crease pressed sharp through the middle. "You hungry?" Marcus asked. Maya shrugged. "A little. That means yes." He sat beside her and opened the lunch bag he had packed before sunrise. There was one turkey sandwich, a bruised apple cut into thin slices, and a small bottle of water. Marcus tore the sandwich cleanly in half, checked both pieces, then handed Maya the one with more filling. "What are you eating?" she asked. "The other half. That one is smaller." "I'm bigger. I can handle it." The air conditioner pushed cold air through a vent above them. Maya rubbed her arms, so Marcus removed his charcoal garage jacket and settled it over her shoulders. The faded oil stain near the cuff rested against her wrist. It smelled faintly of detergent, metal, and the garage office where she sometimes finished homework while he closed out repair tickets. "Is Mom the bad person?" Maya asked. Marcus looked toward the narrow window in the door. Evelyn stood at the far end of the hallway with Deborah and Nolan, listening while 3 people spoke around her at once. "No," he said. "Then why is she sitting with them?" "Because hurt people sometimes trust the voice that sounds most certain. Even when it's wrong?" Marcus folded the empty sandwich wrapper into a small square. "Especially then." Maya studied his face, waiting for him to add something cruel about her mother. He did not. He reached into her backpack, found the folded drawing, and smoothed only the loose corner without forcing the crease flat. "You don't have to fix this today," he said. "Some things need time before they lie straight again." A court aide appeared at the door and told Marcus the trust representative had arrived. He left Maya with Ms. Turner and entered a narrow conference room that smelled of copier heat and stale coffee. A woman from an independent employee trust placed a 4-page document on the table. "Once you sign," she said, "the transfer is irrevocable, even if the settlement is overturned, even if the court later recognizes your full contribution." "I understand. You will not control the funds." "Good." She looked up. "Good." Marcus turned the final page toward himself. "Then no one can pressure me to sell them." At 11:42 a.m. he signed. The representative stamped an escrow receipt and slid it across the table. It confirmed that his remaining economic interest would be held for employee jobs, retirement protection, product safety, and Maya's future benefit under independent supervision. Marcus read every line, folded the receipt once, and carried it back to the courtroom. A legal aid attorney met him outside and quietly suggested freezing all Ardent Mobility accounts. "It would force them to negotiate," the attorney said. "It would also stop payroll. Temporarily. Friday is not temporary to someone buying groceries Thursday night." Marcus asked instead for a narrow order preventing the sale of controlling shares, the transfer of patents, and the destruction of records. Evelyn passed behind him as he spoke. "Payroll stays open," he said. "People should not lose Friday because of our marriage." Her steps slowed, but she kept walking. Back inside, a junior assistant from Deborah's office began collecting what she called processed materials. She lifted the blue folder from the evidence cabinet tray and placed it inside the opposing side's document bin. Marcus crossed the room without raising his voice. "That seal number belongs with the clerk." "It was in our stack," the assistant said. "No, ma'am." He removed the chain of custody slip from his pocket, compared the numbers, and handed both items to the clerk instead of accusing anyone. As the folder changed hands, the edge of the 11:42 escrow receipt showed for less than a second. Nolan saw it. His polished expression did not break, but his fingers tightened around the leather handle of his briefcase. Marcus's phone vibrated. His garage manager spoke in a low, hurried voice. A man carrying a false authorization had just demanded every service ledger from the year Ardent Mobility was founded. Marcus looked at the blue folder, then at Nolan's hand still clenched around the briefcase, and understood that protecting payroll had done more than preserve Friday's checks. It had frightened someone into searching for proof they claimed had never existed. By the time the hearing resumed, Nolan had already turned Marcus's narrow payroll request into a new accusation. Mr. Reed transferred an undisclosed interest at 11:42. He told the judge, his tone calm enough to sound protective rather than alarmed. He then attempted to restrict company transactions while keeping ordinary accounts open. That pattern is consistent with selective asset concealment. Deborah placed the escrow receipt beneath the document camera, making the fresh timestamp glow across the courtroom screen. He says he is protecting workers, she added. We believe he is protecting something he failed to disclose. Evelyn studied the receipt from behind her attorneys. On its surface, the timing looked terrible for Marcus. He had signed away marital assets, moved a private interest into an independent trust, and asked the court to block a sale, all within the same hour. Did you transfer it? She asked. Yes. Before telling me? Yes. Why? Marcus looked at the blue folder inside the clerk's locked evidence case. Fluorescent light flashed across its worn plastic cover, catching the dark oil stain near one corner. Because permission would have reached the wrong people before protection reached the court. Evelyn's jaw tightened. It sounded like an accusation dressed as restraint, and restraint had been Marcus's language for years. She remembered closed garage doors, unfinished conversations, and the months after their son died, when every quiet room between them had felt like another decision made without her. Nolan leaned toward her. This is what I warned you about. He acts alone, then calls secrecy sacrifice. Marcus heard him but did not answer. Instead, he asked the judge for permission to verify one limited fact. Which fact? Who opened the sealed conversion appendix before today? Nolan gave a soft, almost sympathetic laugh. Your Honor, there is no evidence anyone opened it. Then the log will agree with you. Digital logs can be manipulated. Check mine first. The room slowed. Marcus removed his phone from his pocket, set it face down on the table, then placed his garage laptop beside it. The old computer had a chipped corner and a strip of black tape over one hinge. Every device, every account. Start with me. Evelyn's thumb paused against the engraved M&E on her silver pen. A man staging a trap might volunteer selected records. Marcus had just offered the court everything before knowing what the search would show. The judge ordered the e-discovery portal preserved and called in the courthouse digital evidence specialist. A wheeled monitor was brought forward, its fan whining beneath the silence. Lines of access data appeared in pale green and white. The specialist filtered the sealed appendix by file identifier. One entry remained on the screen. Administrative access at 2:14 a.m., 3 nights before the document had been formally exchanged. 5 minutes later, the same account sent a file titled Founder Conversion Schedule to a network printer. The device identification matched a laptop issued to Nolan's advisory firm. Shared administrator credentials, Nolan said immediately. Anyone in our compliance division might have used them. From your assigned device? The judge asked. Device identifiers can be spoofed. Evelyn turned toward him. Could Marcus have done that? Nolan did not hesitate. Given his technical background, certainly. Marcus showed no offense. Then compare the login token with my accounts. The specialist did. Marcus's devices had not touched the portal that night. His garage laptop had been connected to a diagnostic system miles away. Recording a battery repair from 1:51 until 3:06 a.m. Nolan adjusted his cuff. A compromised credential remains the most likely explanation. Anyone could have guessed what was on page 17. No one spoke. The clerk had not announced a page number. The folder had not been opened. Even Deborah's eyes shifted toward Nolan before she controlled them. Evelyn lowered her pen slowly. How do you know it was page 17? She asked. Nolan's expression barely moved. It is a common placement for conversion provisions. The judge ordered his laptop seized for imaging and suspended approval of the property agreement. Under a ceiling-mounted camera, the clerk opened the blue folder only far enough to remove page 17. Marcus did not touch it. He merely asked that it be held beneath the document light. 2 old staple holes appeared near the upper edge, yellowed at the rims. The surrounding pages had clean, newly punched holes in a slightly different position. Marcus looked at the mismatch, then remembered the false authorization presented at his garage. Someone had not been searching for proof that page 17 existed. They had been searching for the original page that had been removed. The 2 sets of staple holes remained under the document light, one yellowed with age, the other sharp and new. So the page was replaced, Deborah said, recovering first. That does not prove Mr. Reed's version is authentic. It doesn't, Marcus replied. Then stop implying it does. I'm not. The air conditioning clicked above the bench, suddenly loud in the pause. Marcus kept both hands visible on the table and looked toward the independent document examiner, not toward Nolan. Test the paper. Test the file history. Test me last. The judge ordered 3 versions of page 17 collected. The page inside the sealed court exhibit, a scanned copy from Ardent Mobility's corporate archive, and a file the court-appointed notary had just recovered from the garage records Marcus's manager had protected. Each version was printed without identifying labels and placed beneath clear covers. You claim you can recognize the original? Deborah asked. I claim the original was built to be recognizable. By whom? Marcus picked up a pencil. By anyone trained to check it. The examiner slid the first page toward him. Marcus marked the typeface used in the first 2 years of Ardent's operation, then pointed to an 8-character checksum in the lower margin. On the second page, the checksum was missing. On the third, the letters were present but the spacing was wrong. He moved no faster than a mechanic listening to an engine before opening the hood. The safety sentence should come before the conversion clause, he said. Why? The examiner asked. Because exhausted people skip downward. The warning had to be seen before the financial language. Nolan leaned forward. This is becoming theater. We have qualified counsel for document interpretation. Then let the qualified examiner finish, the judge said. A chair stopped scraping near the press rail. The examiner placed the 3 pages beneath magnification. On one copy, a faint gray stripe ran vertically through the left margin. Deborah called it a scanning defect. Marcus nodded. It is. Then it weakens the document. No. It dates it. He asked the clerk to retrieve the garage service records delivered by the notary. Inside the packet was a faded repair receipt for an office scanner, paid 9 years earlier. The technician had written, recurring vertical stripe at 1.8 inches from left edge. Replacement drum unavailable. The stripe on the oldest page sat exactly 1.8 inches from the edge. The room lost its whispering. Even the monitor fans seemed louder. A repair receipt proves a scanner malfunction, Nolan said evenly. Not ownership, authorship, or fraud. Correct, Marcus said. He did not smile. He did not look toward the reporters. It proves this page existed when that scanner was still in the garage. Nothing more. Evelyn's hand slowly lowered onto the contribution summary. For the first time, she was not watching Marcus as a former husband defending himself. She was watching how carefully he refused to claim more than the evidence allowed. The examiner continued. The disputed page from Nolan's file had been created 6 weeks earlier. Its font package had not existed when the covenant was signed. The checksum failed verification, and Marcus's signature had been inserted as a flattened image. But Evelyn's signature on the final sheet was genuine. I signed it, she said. Yes, Marcus answered. Then how can the page be false? Because your signature can be real while the page above it is not. Deborah rose. We should stop before incomplete analysis creates a misleading public impression. This can be reviewed privately under normal procedure. Normal procedure already produced a missing page, the judge said. Evelyn reached into her bag and removed the silver fountain pen engraved M&E. She placed it beside the examiner's tools. Check the pressure marks, she said. Nolan turned toward her. Evelyn, there is no need to escalate this. If I signed that packet, this pen was in my hand. Her voice remained controlled, but her thumb no longer rubbed the engraving. I want to know what words were beneath it. The examiner angled the signature page beneath oblique light. Shallow impressions appeared in the paper, fragments left by writing on the sheet that had once rested above it. Before they could be read, Nolan's seized laptop lit with a synchronized notification from Grant. Destroy the old scan log before the audit. Nolan's face remained composed, but the hand resting beside his briefcase withdrew as though the leather had suddenly become hot. The forged page had proven someone altered the covenant. Evelyn's pen was about to reveal what they had removed. Under the examiner's angled light, the pressure marks from Evelyn's silver pen slowly rose from the paper like writing returning from beneath water. The first words were incomplete. Then the specialist adjusted the lens, darkened the room, and read the sentence aloud. The founder safety share shall remain non-transferable during marital dissolution, executive incapacity, or personal distress. No one moved. The courthouse printer in the adjoining office stopped mid-cycle, and the sudden silence left only the hum of the evidence. Monitor. Evelyn stared at the page. That is not the clause in the packet I was given. Marcus kept his eyes on the paper. No, you knew. I knew what the original said. Nolan loosened his tie by less than an inch. This language is being stripped of its corporate context. Founder protections are common, and their presence does not establish fraud. Marcus looked toward the judge. May the court compare the clause with the escrow receipt from 1142? The independent trust representative returned to the witness table and confirmed that Marcus had permanently transferred his remaining economic interest before the property agreement was approved. The transfer left him unable to sell the founder safety share, borrow against it, or reclaim its value if the marriage settlement changed. Deborah folded her hands. That could also be an attempt to hide marital property. Then follow the money, Marcus said. Not my marriage. The judge ordered the financial trail displayed. The first record was a faded garage invoice marked A0001. It showed Marcus purchasing thermal sensors, shielding plates, and emergency cutoff relays with money from his personal account before Ardent Mobility had a corporate bank account. Nolan called it a parts receipt. The next document was the service ledger recovered from the locked garage archive. Beside the same component codes, someone had written M. Read redesign, heat interruption stable after cycle 43. The handwriting was verified against years of repair orders. A patent contribution record then listed Marcus as co-designer of the thermal safety system that had become Ardent's first commercially approved technology. Evelyn's breathing changed. Not because she had never known Marcus was brilliant, but because the official company history now described that work as informal mechanical help. Who authorized the revised contribution summary? She asked. Nolan reached for his water glass. Historical records are routinely standardized during investment review. That was not my question. His fingers left a wet ring on the table. Before he could answer, the financial investigator opened a billing file labeled Project Northstar. Deborah had described it as ordinary divorce consultation. Yet the payer was not Evelyn. The invoices had been settled by a holding company preparing to acquire Ardent, and one line read, Draft marital trigger for founder conversion. Grant shifted in his chair. His phone screen lit, then went dark beneath his palm. Another record appeared. An email from Grant to Nolan stating, Marcus is the last obstacle. Attached to it was the edited cap table with the missing founder position. Obstacle to what? The judge asked. Nolan's voice remained polished, but the softness was gone. To a stable resolution involving a disruptive former stakeholder. You told this court he had no stake, the judge said. Evelyn looked at Marcus. Why didn't you show me these? Marcus was silent for a moment. The blue folder rested between them beneath the white document light, its oil-stained corner darker than the clean legal paper around it. Every message to you passed through someone in this room, he said, and I did not have proof strong enough to survive being called bitter. Deborah opened a private message archive. There are communications indicating Mrs. Hartreed was emotionally impaired when these decisions were made. Marcus recognized the dates immediately. They were from the months after their infant son died. Sleepless nights, panic, words written by two people who could barely remain in the same room without reopening the loss. Those messages could prove Evelyn had been vulnerable to manipulation. They could also expose the most private wound of her life. "Do not enter those," Marcus said. Deborah looked almost pleased. "They support your claim. They are grief, not evidence for public consumption. You are refusing material that could help you? Investigate the money, the access, and the altered files. Leave her grief out of it." Evelyn's eyes stayed on him as the investigator traced Project Northstar through ownership records. The holding company's beneficial interest led back to a private fund controlled by Nolan. The pattern was no longer one altered page. It was a design sequence. Erase Marcus from the cap table, use the divorce to force conversion, acquire the company through a shell buyer, and present the sale as a rescue. Evelyn removed her phone from her bag and placed it beside the silver M&E pen. "I waive privilege for every Northstar transaction," she said. Nolan stood. "Evelyn, that could cost you control of the company. Then control is not worth keeping if it depends on documents I was never allowed to see." The investigator opened one final file before the judge called recess. Security footage showed Nolan, Grant, and a representative of the shell company entering Ardent's restricted archive after midnight. The access badge used at the door carried Evelyn Hartreed's name. She looked at the timestamp and went pale. "I was at the hospital with Maya that night." The judge ordered the footage, badge records, billing files, and devices preserved for an open evidentiary hearing. Whatever had begun as a private divorce could no longer be contained behind closed doors, because someone had used Evelyn's name to open the room where the original covenant disappeared. By 9 the next morning, the same Fulton County courtroom that had watched Marcus Reed sign away his home was filled beyond its usual capacity. Employee representatives sat behind the rail beside independent auditors and 2 members of Ardent Mobility's board. Reporters occupied the last row, their phones dark under the judge's order. Maya remained near the side door with Miss Turner, holding the strap of her backpack while Marcus took the same lonely seat at the left table. He had not changed his charcoal garage jacket. The pale oil mark still rested near his cuff. Evelyn sat across from him, no longer hidden behind 3 attorneys. Deborah Sloan remained at the end of the table, but Evelyn had placed her silver M&E pen directly in front of herself. Nolan Voss entered last, carrying the same leather briefcase and the calm expression of a man arriving to correct someone else's misunderstanding. "This hearing has been inflated by selective technical details," he told the court. "Mr. Reed has used his familiarity with old company systems to create the appearance of conspiracy after losing control of both his marriage and his professional relevance." Marcus did not rise. He placed the grease-stained blue folder beneath the document camera. FR01 appeared first on the screen, followed by the 2:14 a.m. access log and the forged page 17. "Those records establish access," Nolan continued. "They do not establish intent." "Then we will proceed one item at a time," the judge said. The investigator displayed the badge log from Ardent's restricted archive. Evelyn's credential had opened the door shortly after midnight. Nolan folded his hands. "Mrs. Hartreed authorized broad emergency access during a period of corporate instability." Evelyn looked at him. "I was at the hospital with my daughter. Authorization can be delegated. Not with my physical badge." Grant leaned toward Deborah, but the judge ordered him to remain silent. For several seconds, it appeared Nolan had found room to survive. He explained that administrative duplicates were common, that archive visits occurred during acquisitions, and that late hours were necessary when markets were sensitive. A few board members exchanged uncertain looks. Then Deborah stood with a small audio player. "Before this court accepts Mr. Reed as a protector of Ardent, it should hear how he spoke when no judge was listening." She pressed play. Marcus's recorded voice filled the room. "I'll take the company apart before I let them have it." A murmur passed through the gallery. Evelyn's face tightened. Nolan leaned back as if the sentence had restored the shape of his story. Marcus waited until the sound ended. Then he removed an old phone from a padded evidence sleeve. Its black case was worn smooth at the edges, and a crack crossed one corner of the screen. "Play the next 12 seconds, he said. Deborah objected. "The excerpt speaks for itself."
"No," Marcus replied.
The missing words speak for it. The judge nodded to the technician. The complete recording began from the same point. I'll take the company apart before I let them have it, because I would rather dismantle my own work than let a cheaper system hurt families. No one moved. The technician displayed the file hashes. The old phone contained the uninterrupted original. Deborah's version had been cut immediately after the word "it." Marcus looked at the screen rather than at her. You edited my words the same way the contract was edited. You kept the anger and removed what I was protecting. Evelyn slowly lowered her hand from the M&E pen. Nolan spoke before the silence could settle. A fuller recording may improve the context, but it does not prove an acquisition conspiracy. The investigator brought up the parking garage footage. Nolan and Grant appeared beside a representative of the shell company shortly after midnight. The next image showed Grant using an emergency duplication device against Evelyn's access credential. A Project Northstar parking receipt matched the timestamp. Nolan's voice remained controlled. That was a compliance meeting. You testified that you had never met that representative, the judge said. I meant outside a formal capacity. The footage advanced. Nolan shook the man's hand and accepted a sealed envelope before all three entered the restricted elevator. The investigator then displayed Grant's recovered message. She thinks the divorce protects the company. Let her keep thinking that until the vote. Evelyn stood. She did not look toward Marcus for rescue. I authorized access I did not supervise, she said. I allowed professional language to replace questions I was afraid to ask. That failure is mine, even if the deception was theirs. She formally waived privilege over the remaining Northstar records and asked the board to suspend her voting authority until the audit was complete. Marcus watched her without triumph. This is not about punishing people in public, he said. It is about making the record strong enough that no one can bury it again. The judge turned toward him. Mr. Reed, if the proposed sale is stopped, what do you personally receive? Nolan answered before Marcus could. Control of the company and the value he concealed. A woman seated behind the independent auditors rose with the escrow certification in her hand. Your Honor, the trust representative said. That is not possible. The trust representative held the escrow certification beneath the document camera. The transfer became irrevocable. At 11:42 yesterday morning, she said, Mr. Reed cannot reclaim the economic interest, sell FR01, borrow against it, or receive compensation if the proposed acquisition is stopped. Nolan's hand remained on the edge of his briefcase. That interpretation is incomplete. It is the governing instrument, the representative replied. He removed himself from the reward. The projector fan whirred above the silence. A page shifted beneath someone's palm in the gallery, and the dry sound carried across the courtroom. The judge looked at Marcus. If stopping this transaction returns neither the company nor its value to you, why surrender the marital estate as well? Marcus did not look toward the reporters or the ardent board members. He looked at Maya, who stood beside Ms. Turner with both hands wrapped around her backpack strap. I signed away what they could count, he said, so they would stop watching me long enough for the evidence to reach this room. Evelyn's breath caught. The words did not make Marcus richer, more powerful, or less alone. They made the signature beneath Wave's all marital claims exactly what Nolan had insisted it could not be. A sacrifice with no hidden payment. The trust representative confirmed that FR01 could now be exercised only to protect product safety, employee jobs, retirement funds, and the independence of Ardent Mobility. No individual, not Marcus, not Evelyn, not the board, could sell it for personal gain. Nolan opened his mouth, but the judge raised one hand. You have had multiple opportunities to explain the documents. The documents have now explained you. Marcus placed the grease-stained blue folder beneath the camera and opened the final pocket. There was no secret bank statement inside. No stock certificate worth millions. No letter demanding control. He removed a child's drawing folded down the center. The paper had softened at the edges from years of handling. In uneven purple letters it read, Mom builds cars. Dad keeps everyone safe. Maya inhaled softly when she recognized it. The date on the back matched the day the Founder Safety Covenant had been signed, and beside it was the faint brown print of an oil-stained thumb. Beneath the mark, Marcus had written one sentence years earlier. Safety belongs to everyone who depends on the work. The picture proved no crime. It was not meant to, but it revealed what every altered contract, edited recording, and rewritten company history had tried to erase. Marcus had chosen protection before there was a divorce, before Ardent was valuable, and before anyone could reward him for it. The courtroom went still. The air conditioning shut off, leaving the rustle of Maya's jacket sleeve and the faint electronic pulse of the evidence monitor. Deborah's pen slipped from her fingers and rolled beneath the table. Grant stared at the floor. Nolan's eyes moved toward the exit for the first time that morning. The judge asked Marcus what relief he wanted. "Remove the false custody allegations," he said. "Protect Maya's schedule with both parents. Preserve the patents and employee benefits. Keep anyone with a financial interest in the sale away from company decisions. And appoint someone independent to protect the evidence." "You are not asking for the house? No. Your executive position? No. Control of Ardent?" Marcus shook his head. "Truth does not need me to own it." Evelyn pushed her chair back and stepped away from the attorney's table. She stood alone before the bench, holding no binder and offering no excuse. "I let people erase what you built," she said. "I let them question the father you are. I called your silence weakness because believing them was easier than asking what your silence was protecting." Her voice tightened, but she did not look away. Then she turned toward Maya. "Your father did not give you away. He made sure no one could buy the future he promised you." Maya's shoulders lowered as if she had been holding her breath since the first signature. She did not run into the center of the courtroom or speak against anyone. She only looked up at Marcus and loosened one hand from her backpack. The judge suspended approval of the property agreement, froze the proposed transfer of Ardent's controlling assets, ordered preservation of every Northstar device and record, and appointed an independent forensic supervisor. Nolan and Grant's conduct was referred for criminal investigation. Deborah's actions were referred to the State Disciplinary Authority. From the gallery, an Ardent board member announced that Grant was suspended, Nolan's access was terminated, and the acquisition vote was canceled pending an independent audit. Nolan lifted his briefcase and moved toward the aisle. A court officer stepped in front of him. "The devices remain here, sir." For 1 second, Nolan's fingers tightened around the handle. Then they opened. Marcus did not watch him surrender it. He watched Maya cross the small space between them and take his hand. "Did we win?" she whispered. Marcus knelt until they were eye level. The truth got heard. "Does that mean we all go home together?" The question passed through the room more quietly than any ruling. Marcus glanced at Evelyn, whose apology had changed the record but could not repair years in a single morning. "It means we stop lying about why we broke," he told Maya. "Going home takes more work." The court had restored Marcus's name and stopped the people who tried to profit from his silence. But as he closed the blue folder and felt his daughter's fingers tighten around his own, one question remained. Now that power, recognition, and choice had finally returned to him, what would he use them to protect next? The courtroom emptied without applause. Reporters waited beyond the glass doors, but Marcus kept Maya close beneath his charcoal garage jacket while the clerk corrected the custody record and removed the false allegations from the pending file. Evelyn walked several steps behind them, carrying the grease-stained blue folder with both hands until she reached Marcus near the elevators. "This belongs with you," she said. Marcus looked at the worn corners, then at the silver M&E pen still clipped inside her suit pocket. "For now," he answered. "It belongs with the evidence." He handed the folder back to the court officer. It was a small choice, but Evelyn understood it. Marcus would not turn proof into a trophy, and he would not let relief become carelessness. In the months that followed, the legal system moved more slowly than the silence in that courtroom. Nolan was charged with fraud, unauthorized access, and evidence interference, then accepted a plea agreement requiring restitution and barring him from managing client assets. Grant was removed from Ardent's board, lost his voting authority, and faced civil liability for the damage caused by Project North Star. Deborah was suspended while the state disciplinary authority investigated her conflicts of interest and use of an edited recording. The shell company's acquisition rights were canceled. None of it happened with shouting or public humiliation. Marcus asked only that each consequence be documented, reviewed, and imposed through the same procedures the others had tried to bend. Ardent's independent audit restored his name to the original incorporation record. At a company meeting, Evelyn stood before hundreds of employees and identified Marcus as co-founder, designer of the first thermal safety system, and author of the Founder Safety Covenant. Then she closed the presentation and spoke without a screen behind her. "His technical work helped build this company," she said. "But that is not the reason you should respect him. Respect him because he protected your paychecks while his own home was at risk. Because he refused to expose private grief to win custody. Because he submitted his devices before accusing anyone else. Because he gave up the reward before he knew the truth would reach the room." Marcus accepted no executive office. He agreed to serve as an independent safety steward, with authority to challenge unsafe decisions but no power over Evelyn's position or personal life. Ardent created an employee safety council, whistleblower protection fund, annual conflict review, and two-step verification for emergency access. The founder safety share remained in the independent trust, beyond the reach of any individual. Marcus returned to the old garage. He kept the scratched workbench, the faded scanner receipt, and invoices 0001, but the building changed around them. Its service bays became classrooms for single parents, young adults leaving foster care, and workers learning electric vehicle repair. Above the entrance, a modest sign read "Reed Safety and Skills Center." "No one is invisible here." Maya chose where to hang her picture. She unfolded it carefully, leaving the crease down the middle, and placed it in a plain black frame beside the blue folder, now released from evidence. "Should we flatten it?" Evelyn asked. Maya shook her head. "It still says the same thing." Marcus smiled. No one asked the child to explain contracts, choose sides, or carry messages between her parents. Marcus and Evelyn told her together that the divorce was not her fault and that adults were responsible for repairing what adults had broken. Evelyn began grief counseling alone before asking Marcus to join co-parenting therapy. She stopped using assistants to speak for her, respected his home and schedule, and never asked Maya to make peace on her behalf. Marcus admitted that his silence, though meant to protect, had sometimes become a locked door. Forgiveness came slowly and with boundaries. 6 months later, Evelyn met him at the diner where they had once sketched their first prototype on the back of a receipt. Rain tapped softly against the window. She placed the old garage key between 2 coffee cups. There was no ring beside it. "I'm not asking to come home," she said. "I'm asking whether honesty can have coffee with you." Marcus turned the key once beneath his fingers. "Coffee is a beginning, not a promise." "Then let it be a beginning." That evening, they left the center together. Maya held Marcus's hand while Evelyn walked beside them, close enough to belong to the moment but not trying to stand where trust had not yet invited her. Marcus switched off the garage lights. For a few seconds, all three stood quietly beneath the glowing sign, looking through the window at the child's creased picture and the old blue folder that no longer represented what he had lost. It represented what he had refused to let others steal. Then the final light clicked off, and in the gentle darkness, dignity needed no voice at all. Only a good man still choosing to protect what was true.